I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no story ready for you. So I'm just going to make up
I don't know what you're going to do.
some bullshit. And lo, across the fields of Thayer, Missouri.
Is there some intro music?
Well,
no intro music?
We have something that gets added somewhere. I don't know.
Counting us down, folks. Welcome to a fabulous new edition of Missouri Swagger. I'm Dennis Hopeless.
And you sound terrific, Dennis.
You sound amazing. I love that it only took us 22 minutes to make that happen.
22 minutes and 24 hours of podcasting.
I'm Kyle Strahm. And this guy, if the camera, if it looks right, if I'm really pointing at him, this guy is
Are you pointing to me because you're not?
Yeah, I am on my screen. This
and
guy.
I'm Cullen Bunn. How's it going, guys?
Fine. Day 54.
I can barely hear you now.
Uh-oh.
You can barely hear me?
Yeah, you guys are real quiet. It's all right. We'll make it work. I don't pay that much attention anyway.
I was going to say, you don't really care what we say.
We'll talk loudly. Just turn it way up, and then that'll work for you.
Well, it is way up, I think.
We'll cut this part out.
Will we?
No, we won't.
Yeah, it's as loud as I can make it.
All right. So today is the 8th, May 8th. Is
it? It sounds right.
It is May 8th, and I have a special surprise for the show. I'm gonna open this package I received.
What is it?
Well, you're about to find out. I
hope your mail is only a special surprise. If you know there's something in there we're going to care about.
I what now?
You opening your mail is only a special surprise. If you know for sure there's something in there we're going to care about.
Well, I don't think you're going to care about it, but some people will care about it.
Some Cthulhu Wars nonsense.
No, it's not that.
I was going to say, he better not be getting a Cthulhu Wars nonsense if I'm not getting Cthulhu Wars nonsense. All right, what do we got?
It's the Baby Yoda.
You got a Baby Yoda figure?
I pre-ordered it like 6 months ago. Look how tiny he is. I expected it to be a bigger package.
Well, he's a baby.
He is. Well,
does he have a snake?
This is 1.1 inches tall.
Does he have a gimmer stick?
No.
What?
Don't be stupid.
I guess you don't need a gimmer stick as a baby.
Let's compare.
Yeah.
So
there's the Yoda I like.
Looks about right?
Yeah, that's what he
got. That one has a gimmer stick.
Do you know how many times I went to K&K Toys in the mall in Goldsboro, North Carolina, asking them if they had that little Yoda with the orange snake? Day after day, week after week, until they finally got it. They were so tired of me.
I bet they were, but you got it, right?
I did get it. But I wanted that Yoda figure more than anything in the world.
Were you polite or were you obnoxious?
What'd you say?
Were you polite?
Were you polite or were you obnoxious?
Oh, I was a very polite kid all the time. I didn't become a jackassy, obnoxious a-hole until much later in life.
What I like about this Baby Yoda is after the show came out, after The Mandalorian aired, and everybody loved Baby Yoda, in the span of about 3 days, the headlines started saying, The Mandalorian, there won't be Baby Yoda toys for Christmas because of that was the headline. No Baby Yoda toys for Christmas. And then step by step in my newsfeed, I would get new stories about this Baby Yoda tragedy. And they changed within a matter of hours. They went, no Baby Yoda toys. No Baby Yoda toys because Jon Favreau wanted things to be a surprise. No Baby Yoda toys because what's his name? The guy who played Lando in Solo. Donald Glover, right?
Yes.
No Baby Yoda toys because of Donald Glover. But what happened was Donald Glover had told Jon Favreau that people like to be surprised. Nobody's surprised about anything anymore, and that's a commodity. So if you don't tell anybody about this Baby Yoda, people are going to lose their minds. And he pointed to Beyonce, who will just drop an album and say, you get more advertising from everybody freaking out that Beyonce dropped a surprise album than you get from anything else. And after that became part of the narrative, the headline changed. Like 2 days later, the headline changed to Beyonce's fault. There are no Baby Yoda toys.
Which on some level, I suppose, is true.
Maybe. In that
Beyonce
way,
didn't exist and wasn't extremely good at whatever that is, viral album dropping.
It might be true.
Then that reference wouldn't have. Of course, somebody else would probably do that.
I also think that they didn't have faith in the Baby Yoda phenomenon because otherwise they would never have made that decision. If they knew it was going to be huge, they never would have been like, yeah, whatever, do what you want. Because when the new movie came out, The Rise of Skywalker, that little droid with the wheel,
Yeah.
I don't remember what his name is.
Wheelie.
Well, they have everything with that thing. They thought that was going to be the new.
They should have put their money on Babu Freak because he was the thing everybody would have loved. I would have bought a Babu Freak toy.
I bought a C-3PO just to get the Babu Freak toy. It was
scale is problematic on Babu Freak.
Plush.
Yeah,
no, but
plush.
But that droid, they made him into lamps. They made him into everything.
Yeah.
And it's sad because there are photos of these big like bins full of stuffed versions of him that they'll never sell.
Unsaleable. So
anyway,
good work with the Baby Yoda. I like it. I like the packaging. That's collector's mentality packaging.
This is good packaging. I don't feel the need to open this.
Right, because you see him. Unless you're going to play with him.
I'm going to open it.
But what could you do with it?
I'll put it next to my Babu Freak.
Right. I mean, I understand what you're going to do with it, but I'm saying playing with that thing is moving its arms up and down.
Well, the funny thing is this is the Black Series Baby Yoda. So the Black Series are those really nice ones. Mm-hmm. And this one, he's in scale. I don't have any of those. I have IG-88.
That reminds me, I went to a convention a little while back, and they had some real Ghostbusters action figures. And I know Kyle likes real Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. So I texted him, and I took pictures of him and sent him the message. I said, do you want these? I'll pick them up for you, and, you can reimburse me. And, we went back and forth. How much were they? And they were too much, more than Kyle wanted to spend. And the guy had priced them that way because they were still in the original packaging. And he said, well, yeah. So I told him, he's like, so do your friend want those? And I said, well, no. I said, he only, he doesn't want to spend that much because he's going to take him out of the package anyway. And the guy was like, oh, what? He's going to take him out of the pack? And I was like, yeah, he's going to play with them, I guess. I don't know what he's going to do with them. But he was really upset that you were going to open those Ghostbuster toys if you bought them. Mm. I don't think he would have sold them to me at that point.
He would have taken the money.
Yes.
So while I was digging today for what we're going to talk about on this episode, I came across some things. Firstly, Dennis, Cullen's story reminded me, I was at a convention and I saw this and I asked if your kids wanted it. And you said yes. So At some point, this will make its way to your children.
Panther was by far the most badass Thundercat. Look at him.
He's pretty cool.
He's got like Thunderdome suspenders.
He does. Yeah, you wouldn't want him to toss you over his shoulder. And
depends on where you're headed.
And one more. So after the episode where we talked about our most tragic toys that broke when we were kids, my good friend Andy Schneeflock listened to that episode. And my birthday was coming up. So he sent me this Webster, which was my toy that tragically broke because it has a zip line.
That dude's name is Webster?
Webstore.
Webstore.
Oh, Webstore. Okay, that's a little more cool.
Are you ready? I don't think you're ready. I don't think you're ready. Oh.
You broke him again. That would have been the best. It would have been awesome if you broke him right then.
That's all I have to say about toys. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Well,
so I made this. I spent the last couple of days crafting us a TikTok. One of the things that I've been doing in quarantine and during the period of time earlier in the year when I had to live with my mother because my house is being worked on, is I got invested in TikTok. I've been watching TikToks, and TikTok is the new social media platform that the kids
is
watch.
that thing where young kids convince older people to dance?
I mean, that happens. But
so how do you get to our TikTok?
It's Missouri Swagger. You look it up. But our TikTok, much like everything I do on this show or related to this show, I just made some really bad attempts and threw them up there to see what would happen just to create it. But it was interesting, the process of going back through old shows and using my phone to record my laptop playing them and then cutting them into clips for TikTok, is I have some thoughts on how we could make the show more entertaining that I won't share on the show. But rewatching old shows, turns out, is a good way to make new shows better.
Yeah, that
but
makes
also,
sense.
If only you had used any of that knowledge before this episode.
Yeah. Well, hey, I got a microphone. Well, by the way, my audio was so bad in the first couple episodes, I almost didn't post them.
Oh yeah, it was awful.
Really
I
bad.
watched the first episode again the other night, and I was like, it was impossible to listen to you.
Believe it or not, it has gotten better.
I believe it.
But yeah, our audio got better. Also, we were very dry in the first episode. I think we figured out after a while that
you needed to be drunk. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean it was we were not giving each other shit. It was a lot more austere. Is that the word? The other thing that I have figured out about, so what I've mostly been doing is taking old Swagger stories and cutting down just little bits of them to put on there. We should practice our Swagger stories before we tell them, because all three of us, we have really good stories that we have not told in a while, and we just start fucking talking. And so there'll be periods in the middle where we will explain unnecessarily details that have nothing to do with the setup and punchline.
Well, I have been lobbying to get rid of the Swagger stories forever. So
why? Every story you tell is a Swagger story.
That's the other thing, is that it's like we wait till the end to tell Swagger stories, but the whole fucking show has become Swagger stories. So we're gonna do it anyway. But when we tell the ones like like our I don't know, our tales of yore that we have, that we like our bar stories, we should practice which one we're gonna tell if we're gonna tell one, because if we cut some of the fat out, they'd be better.
And Cullen and I were talking earlier today, and Cullen, Dennis and I were talking. See, I should have written this story down. But Cullen, you're telling the Swagger story today.
I don't know what story that is, so how can I practice it? I don't know. I have no story ready for you. So I'm just going to make up.
I don't know what you're going to do.
Some bullshit. And lo, across the fields of fair Missouri.
So basically all of that is to say, go to our TikTok, be unimpressed. I want you to follow us and comment. You can mock us. You can explain what we've done wrong. You tell us what you want to see more of. But yeah.
I don't want to be mocked.
Why not? We're going to be mocked. I was expecting us to be mocked because TikTok is full of mockery. It's a bunch of children making fun of each other. And we got some views, like not a ton, but no one so far has made fun of us, which was very surprising to me.
You know,
I was kind of looking forward to being roasted.
Huh? Did is there a hair emoticon with just hair? So
well, there's probably something on there because they have those stickers, like the little animated GIF sticker things you can drop on, which is what I've been using because I'm 110 years old.
Okay.
I don't know, man.
Cool.
It's the wild.
Thanks, Dennis. Everybody, you should go check out our TikTok. I'm going to check it out. I downloaded TikTok, but I haven't opened it.
Our views
in
increased
days.
from it. Our views increased significantly from it on the
really
first episode and the most recent episode. So it worked on some level.
Cool.
This is great radio, by the way.
Everybody check out TikTok.
Cullen, another thing I found while I was digging around today, relates directly to your dungeon game. It's the Dungeons and Dragons Choose Your Own Adventure book, Dungeon of Dread.
That's right.
And then this other one, Mountain of Mirrors.
Let me see Mountain of Mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have that one for certain somewhere. You're going to give me that Dungeon of Dread one, though.
I'm not giving you this, but
Yes, you are.
I remember, the one thing I remember is this pool, there's a key in it, but it was a reflection of the key hanging above. It was a very...
That water weird comes out.
Spoiler.
Your ass.
So if you read that book, make your decision based on knowing the key is hanging above. That's all I got.
Spoilers. You're supposed to... Come on, Kyle. You got to let these people get through these adventures on their own.
Well, before we dive into our topic today, where can you be found on the internet, Cullen?
So you can find me at cullenbunn.com, and you can follow me on social media. The best place is Twitter. So it's just at Cullen Bunn, and you can also find me on Patreon under the name Cullen Bunn. So check all of those things out.
Dennis, you can be found...
Missouri Swagger on TikTok. We can all be found there eventually. I'm going to make these guys do the dances and the trends. They're called trends.
If we play DDR, we can put it on the TikTok. That'll light them up. That'll burn the house down.
It'll burn it all the way down.
The internet cable fibers will explode.
And then I'm Hopeless Dent on Twitter, or you can search my name on Twitter. That's where I'm the most.
And I am. You can find me on Patreon at Kyle Strahm, and on Instagram Kyle Strahm _. And today, what are we talking about? What are we talking about, guys?
Comic books.
Early comic book memories.
We're talking about, yes, early comic book memories. Specifically, well, I'm going to be talking about the first comic I bought in a store.
See,
that's good.
I'm going to talk about one of my most vivid early comic book memories. It couldn't have been the first comic I bought because I remember reading it in a different house. But it was the book I'm talking about had a big impact on me. So,
what about you, Dennis? Did you find yours?
I dug through every single box I have down there.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. And I could
impressed by
find neither Planet Terry number 9, I believe. Hold on, I'll tell you. Nor could I find this Planet Terry number... Sorry. Son of a bitch. There it is. Number 9, yeah. Planetary number 9. And there was an issue of Firestorm that I remembered the cover vividly of this issue of Firestorm and what was on it. And I went and I have now looked at every single digital cover of Firestorm available on the internet. And either I don't really remember the cover, like what I'm remembering must be a splash page on the inside, because I bought 5 based on the villains and the storyline, and they are not correct. So
about 5 issues, man. How many volumes of Firestorm are there?
There have only been 3. One was a mini series in the 70s, which it was not part of, and then it ran for like 100 issues from the early 80s through the early 90s, and it was somewhere in there. I don't know. I thought it had an ice skating lady on the front and some sort of thorn villain that was shooting her with thorns, but none of that parses. I did a lot of research. And then reading the Planet Terry, I vividly remember the cover, which is Planet Terry on like a big arcade-esque pinball machine. But when I was reading through it, I have no memory of the story whatsoever. It was basically they land on a planet that is some sort of game show planet, like with the Running Man, and then they get chased through.
Like Avengers Arena.
Sort of.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that why you like arcade so much?
It's like what?
Do you feel like Do you feel like Avengers Arena was subconsciously influenced by this comic that you loved?
No, because you guys are taking the famous arcade X-Men issue where they're inside a pinball machine, which has arcade in it, but is nothing like Avengers Arena, and assuming that I conflated the two. But I was not even aware of that issue.
No, I'm not saying.
How many children died in that issue of Planet Terry? What made you the way you are?
I don't know what made me the way. I don't think Planet Terry made me. My point is, I don't think those were the first 2 comics I bought, and I bought them at a Stuckey's in a plastic bag. They put like a 2-pack on a road trip. But based on the date of when Planet Terry came out, I probably couldn't even read whenever this happened, because it would have happened in 1985 when I was 4. So yeah, I'm guessing that's the reason I don't remember the story that much, is because I couldn't read it. The comics that, and then at some point right after that, my dad broke into someone's barn looking for old cars to try to buy, and found a box of comics from the 70s.
So he broke into their barn to try to buy an old car.
When my dad's move, he worked several states. So his job was to repair irrigation systems that had been struck by lightning for golf courses. So he would drive around like a 3-state radius and go to these golf courses. So when he was in between the cities, he'd stop on these people's property. And what people do with cars they don't want anymore, if they have a barn, is they cover them up with a tarp and they put them in the barn. So he found if he would go snooping around in people's barns, he'd find old hot rods and shit that their kids left there that they hadn't thought of in years. And then he would make them lowball offers, which is how I got a 1970 and a half Z28 when I was 13 that he never fixed. That's the other thing about my dad. He never actually did anything with cars. He just collected them. But my father was also a criminal. So if he was in there and nobody knew it and he saw something he could carry out, like a box of comics, he did. So he brought me someone's comic book collection that had been in their barn rafters. And the only thing I remember being in there of note was Dark Shadows #1, which when I got my first Wizard magazine that had the price guide in the back, if that comic was worth like $150 or something. But it had to have the poster, the fold-out poster in the middle, which had been removed from my copy.
It was hanging on the wall of that barn.
Yeah.
The staples had been, he pulled it, but someone was careful. They like pulled the staples apart. So the staples were a bit loose.
They wanted that poster.
They did. So that's why when the Johnny Depp Dark Shadows movie came out, I had some point of reference, even though it predates
That's
me.
funny. I remember there was supposed to be a sequel to Beetlejuice. There was a script written, a screenplay, and it was called Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. And the screenplay has never been released online, but there have been enough leaks about what it was supposed to be about. And it was about the Dietz family going to Hawaii, and Lydia falls in love with a surfer boy, and there are some giant like Easter Island heads that come to life and run amok, and Beetlejuice enters a surfing competition. And I feel like after I saw that Dark Shadows movie, I feel like that was Tim Burton getting that out of his system, because that the whole tone of that Dark Shadows movie, I feel like, was what Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian felt like.
Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian sounds like a mashup of Beetlejuice and Back to the Beach. Remember that movie?
It does. Also what? No, I got nothing.
Also, it would have been like Beta Goths in the Sun to have a Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian, because Lydia in Hawaii would have been an amusing visual.
And that's what Barnabas Collins is in that movie. That movie was weird when she was revealed to be a werewolf. That was out of nowhere.
Why are you just spoiling shit right and left?
Nobody knows what I'm talking about. We'll still be surprised. You do know?
Yeah. I watched that Dark Shadows Beetlejuice movie.
My mom loved Dark Shadows. She said she would run home from school every day.
Yeah, my mom
to
did
make
too.
sure that she could see it. And Evie and I have watched some of it. It's a slow burn.
Well, it's an interesting. I was just talking to Brian Hurt about it the other day, about Dark Shadows, because he's starting to watch it. And the thing that he didn't realize is the characters that made Dark Shadows so popular when it was out. Obviously Barnabas Collins was a big deal. He didn't come into that show until 200 episodes in.
Right, and when it's on like Netflix or whatever, that's the episode that they started on.
Yeah, they start with Barnabas
because it was failing, and it was going to be off the air.
I like that it was failing after 200 episodes, and then they. Right. But back then, you only got to watch shit if you watched it the first time. It's not like they necessarily ever played it again, so they. It
was on 5 times a week. So what's the math on that? 40 weeks, less than a year.
There was a show called oh God, Swan Crossing or something. It was like a children's soap opera, like a preteen soap opera that was on in the early 90s. And it had, I want to say it had Sarah Michelle Gellar as a teenager in it. It had some people, like some people that were famous after that in it. But my sister and I watched it, and it seemed like it was on for 4 years. But it turns out it was on every single day of a summer. So it was only on for 3 months, but there were like, 2 seasons worth of episodes.
Yeah. Somebody took old Doctor Who episodes and they cut out. Have you guys watched much old Doctor Who?
When I was a kid, I used to rush home from school to watch old Doctor Who episodes.
So I've only seen a couple of episodes, and they're also a slow burn. I was entertained, but I was shown what someone thought were the best. But when Doctor Who leaves the house, he'll walk across the yard to get to his car for 20 seconds. And that's part of the show. So somebody went through and edited every Doctor Who down to a 7-minute episode. And they took.
I want him to walk to the car.
But if they did that with Dark Shadows, I feel like you could get through it a lot faster.
I seem to remember PBS used to air 3 or 4 episodes of Doctor Who at a time, like in the afternoon. So I'd rush home and I could watch. Usually most of the arcs of the old Doctor Who show were 4 episodes long. You could almost watch an entire arc of the story. But yeah, I loved that when I was a kid.
So the episode I saw was called like Ghosts or Phantoms of Mars or something like that. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I mean, I know that title. I couldn't tell you what happened in that episode.
I was told it was the very best Tom Baker episode.
Yeah. Our friend Jimmy Z could tell you what happens in every episode of Doctor Who. That
Dan Slott's like that too.
Yeah.
We didn't get cable until I was 14. So there were lots of things that were on PBS that I would see as I was flipping through the 4 channels that we got whenever I was a child. But I definitely saw bits and pieces of old Doctor Who, not knowing what the fuck it was. And then years later, whenever the internet.
Yeah, see, I remember sort of moments from old Doctor Who's, and like I said, I'd watch them at night every night I'd watch Doctor Who, but I don't remember many of the storylines. But I remember like episodes. There's an episode where these Cybermen are doing, the Cybermen are up to no good, and this kid jumps on the back of a Cyberman, and he has like a little gold medallion, and he scrapes it into the Cyberman's battery pack or whatever, and it kills him, but the kid dies at the same time. And I remember being horrified that kid.
Does Doctor Who bring the kid back to life?
No, I think that kid was out of the show at that point. Or at least I didn't see any more episodes with that kid. Doctor Who's not an angel. He can't bring people. Well, I guess he can in the new stuff, right? He can bring people back to life.
I don't know what he is.
I think it's funny that you were horrified that one child died in an episode of Doctor Who, but children that were alive when the prequels happened got to watch Anakin slaughter every Jedi child.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch it.
And
we saw a little bit of it.
Grown up. What, you haven't watched the episode of Anakin killing people?
He doesn't kill him. You don't see it. He turns on his lightsaber, and the little Cindy Lou Who is there, and he's like, and then they cut away.
But I'm pretty sure we know he killed him.
You didn't see it.
It's funny. The other day, I walked upstairs on May the 4th, and I said something about Anakin. I must have been cold because I had my hoodie on, and Cindy said something about, looking like a cultist or something. And I said, I think I'm trying to do my Anakin Skywalker walking into that Temple of the Children routine.
Temple of Children. The Temple of Children about to be slaughtered.
And my kid instantly just goes, oh yeah, this. And he had on his phone that scene, but only when Anakin turns on the lightsaber, it cuts to this dude like in a ball pit with like a foam weapon just hitting kids and throwing them across the room. He hits kids and they're spinning and flying, and it was the funniest thing. But he just had that queued up on his phone.
He was waiting for the perfect time to show you. There was a movie I saw. I remember watching it at my grandma's house. It was a horror movie, and it was about aliens or something who would put people in a chamber where a needle came down, a really slow-moving needle that would inject the back of their neck, and then they would become evil or under the control of the aliens.
That movie's called Invasion of the Needle Necks.
Is it really? Are you fucking with me?
I'm fucking with you.
But I've always wanted to watch that movie because we had to leave early because my parents had no interest in they did not care if I finished watching the movie or not. It was time to go.
All right, so anybody who knows what that movie is, tell us so that Kyle can watch it.
Please do.
When I was a kid, in the summers, the Dollar Theater by Independence Center would play like weird children's movies for $1 in the middle of the day, like matinees, but they were movies that weren't normal. They weren't even like late run. They were just things that had never run. So we got like strange Canadian made for TV movies and stuff. I had all these strange memories, like when I would describe them even a few years later, nobody knew what the fuck I was talking about. But one of my favorites was the peanut butter solution.
I've heard a lot about the peanut butter solution.
Which I may have discussed it on the show before, but it is about a child that gets scared in a ghost, like a haunted house, so badly that his hair falls out. And then he finds like a book in the library that is it's like a potion made out of peanut butter that will make your hair regrow. And it works, but the hair doesn't ever stop growing. So by the end of the movie, it's growing faster and faster, and he has to be like a
real hair
machine. Yeah. And there's a side
enter back into this story.
What?
Does the ghost enter back into the story?
I don't even know that. I don't remember the ghost part being a big deal. I know that whatever scared him at the beginning, which may not have even been a ghost, there's a bad guy at the end that has him in like a thresher that's cutting his hair as it grows faster. But the best character in the movie is the like kind of dirty best friend character who wants pubic hair and he hasn't gone through puberty yet. So he puts the peanut butter solution on his genitals. And then at one point he walks out of his bedroom and there's hair coming out the bottom of his pajama pants. Like it's growing down his leg.
Man.
This is a really weird thing to put in a kid's movie.
Yeah.
I feel like
Did
this
you get
movie
it?
makes me understand where you come from now, Dennis.
Because of my hair?
Yeah.
Oh.
What we don't see off camera, whenever Dennis ducks out, he's putting Jif in his hair.
No.
Cullen, what was the first comic you bought? Well, you said it wasn't the first comic you bought.
This definitely wasn't the first comic, because I remember reading older issues of X-Men and stuff like that, because I can picture the house where I was sitting when I read these comics, and I know exactly where I was sitting when I read this book, and I was living in Newton Grove, North Carolina, and I remember sitting on the floor of my room, surrounded by Mego action figures, because I was a really big fan of the Mego superheroes.
Which the superheroes? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you watch that documentary, The Toys That Made Us, about the Mego?
No.
Oh, so you didn't see the sleazy, manipulative guys that made those toys to get your money?
No.
You should watch it.
Yeah, no. I loved those toys when I was a kid. Loved them. I had mostly superheroes. I had Conan, and I had a bunch of the Star Trek guys too.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being on the floor surrounded by them, and I had a pile of comic books, and I'd gotten this at the grocery store, and it was Avengers number 154. And that book, it's one of the ones I credit to, thank God comic book stores came along, because it was part one of a story arc.
Mm-hmm.
The next issue was like in super villain team up number whatever.
It was a crossover.
Yeah, so my store didn't have that. So I never knew what happened. And in this book, the Atlanteans, led by Atuma, they have this big plan that they're going to capture the Avengers and make the Avengers fight Namor to distract him while they go off and do something else. It's awful.
It's Atuma?
Atuma, yeah. He's this big orca.
I've been trying to figure out a question to ask you to get you to say it's not Atuma.
Oh,
but I couldn't put it together.
But anyway, Atuma sends this guy named Tyrak the Treacherous, and he's like this big Atlantean. He has a headband with bat wings on it, and he wears glasses that look like gargoyle sunglasses.
But didn't you dig out the comic?
I've got it right here.
Why don't you show us instead of describing it?
No, I don't have the comic. I bought it. I bought the PDF or the digital. So because I can't dig through all those boxes of comics.
Okay.
So anyway, he comes in and he fights the Avengers, and I think Anton will be able to throw up some images or something, hopefully, of what some of these.
If you send them to him.
Yeah, he fights the Avengers. And
Anton fights the Avengers.
Tyrak the Treacherous fights the Avengers.
That's the guy with the bad ears?
Yes.
Okay.
As a kid, I thought he killed the Avengers. I thought that because he Iron Man jumps at him and he grabs Iron Man's repulsor thing in his chest and rips it out. And the caption read, "Without his battery pack, Iron Man is as good as dead." But dead was in big bold letters. So I was like, Iron Man's dead. and then he sprays the wasp with like some insect repellent, and she falls. And I was like, he killed the wasp with Seven Dust. And Yellow Jacket comes and catches the wasp before she hits the ground, and he grabs them both and crushes them in his fist. And I was like, he just crushed Yellow Jacket and the wasp. And then he knocks a building down on Captain America, and I thought Captain America was dead. And Beast, this was the most horrifying part for a kid who really wasn't reading the book that well. He was just flipping through and reading bits and pieces. Beast runs away. He leaves. And I was like, Beast just abandoned his friends to death and destruction. But I never read the second issue for years. Obviously I knew the Avengers didn't die eventually, but I thought they died in that issue, and it was awful. It was traumatizing to young Cullen.
When did you finally read the next issue?
Oh, who knows? Years and years later. I mean, I wasn't getting books in any kind of chronological order for a long time. But it is a book that I have CGC graded. I have a copy of it CGC graded in the other room because that book meant so much to me. And I probably have 2 or 3 copies in comic book boxes in the closet over there.
What grade does your CGC have?
It's not. It's probably like a low 9. I can't remember. It's like a low 9. I think I could pull it out. It could be a 6 or 7, but I think because it's not a key issue or anything, I think it had a little bit higher grade on some of those. But it's probably like a 9.1 or something. So not a great, but not bad.
Cullen would brag to his friends in high school that he owned the last issue of the Avengers.
Yeah. Guys, I have the last issue.
There was a kid who bought like a reprint of the first appearance of Dr. Octopus, and he would always brag about it. And we had a school carnival one day as a fundraiser, and it was just on the playground. It was shitty, but there was a game where you could throw a ring onto these 2-liter bottles of soda. And if you got on there, you won the bottle of soda. And I was really good at it. And with no foresight at all, I won like 12 2-liter bottles of soda. But I had to walk home. And so this kid, his name was Greg, he said, well, if you give me a bottle of soda, I'll help you carry that home. No, he didn't help me carry it home. It was just to give him a bottle of soda. It's like, you give me 1 or 2 of those, I'll give you my Dr. Octopus comic. And I was like, that's a great deal. And so I let him have the 2 bottles of soda, but he never produced the Dr. Octopus comic, even after many times of reminding him. And I learned a valuable lesson. I ended up putting the bottles in a box and kicking it, like pushing it with my feet because I couldn't lift it, many blocks home. And this other kid came by and he tried to steal some of them, and I bit him on the arm. And he ran off.
Quite a tale.
Wow. Did you guys are too young to have collected glass bottles to turn in for deposit money, right?
No, we did it when I was little.
Okay.
I didn't do it.
Do a lot. Imagining you carrying all those bottles reminded me, I used to take the wagon down the road and I'd just pick up glass bottles and then wheel them to the grocery store and sell them for 10 cents a piece. Or
I should have taken a wagon to that carnival.
You should have.
You didn't know you were going to win a ridiculous amount of liquid. I did the same thing when I was a senior. My mom took me on a senior trip March of my senior year, so I missed like 2.5 weeks of senior year because it was cheaper, and that's how my mom's mind worked. But she had bought me a rolling duffel bag at the time. Like rolling luggage technology had gotten to a place where they had duffel bags where they had wheels on the back. But they had not yet figured out that if you're going to drag something heavy with wheels, it needs to have an extended arm, no matter what it's shaped like, or it runs into your fucking ankle. And we got pushed on our plane and got a bunch of airline vouchers. and they only worked at the airline-owned restaurants and kiosks, so we couldn't spend most of them. And right before we got on the plane, I found a place that sold Snapples, when Snapple was really big, but was still in the glass bottles. So I spent all of our vouchers on this Snapple, and I filled my bag with it. So we get to London several hours later, and my mom doesn't believe in paying for taxi cabs when you can just walk a mile and a half. And so we're walking like half a mile uphill at one point. I'm dragging this fucking bag that has 12 glass bottles of Snapple in it on top of my luggage. And I threw some sort of hissy fit. My mom still tells the story where I kicked the bag and threw it over and said, "Fuck it, I'm leaving it here," and marched up the hill. So for a while, she had to drag my stupid bag full of Snapple. Because, yeah, liquid is heavy.
Yeah.
So if you have to move a lot of soda or beer or Snapple, it's heavy.
Kyle, what comic do you want to talk about?
So my mom used to take me to Liberty Sound and Video to rent a movie or a video game. And then we'd go to Green Hills on the way home, and I'd get a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper. And that's where I first started getting comics on the spinner rack there. But the first one I bought was this one right here. It's Marvel Comics Presents number 93. And these were flip books. So one side is Cable and Ghost Rider, the unlikely duo. And this side is Wolverine.
Which cover pulled you in? Which of those two covers?
I don't know. I don't remember. Probably both of them. Because, I was given like $2 and I could pick out whatever. So I was probably like, oh, that's cool. I think the Sam Keith probably got me more than this did. However, the story in this, it starts with Wolverine going through Canada, and he finds that some construction site has begun doing work in his beloved homeland. And then he gets into a fight with these construction workers, and then he takes off all their clothes and hangs them upside down.
Like the Predator.
He is like the Predator. And then he sees this beaver, and he gets really nostalgic. And
of course he does.
So here, this is good. As he drifts off to sleep, here he is looking off to the side, and he sees it. And he goes to sleep, and he begins to remember the first time he came up to Canada, which was long ago. And here he is. That's him in the snow. Now, I thought this was awesome, and I must have gone back. I didn't know when comics came out. I didn't know they were monthly or weekly or what. I think I went back the next week with my mom, and they had the next issue with this awesome Sam Keith cover.
That is awesome.
And he did the other one too. So the problem with the Ghost Rider story was this part hooked me. I won't get into what it's about, but I was hooked. And then this one, I was like, that's awesome. And then the very next issue, they didn't have. I never got it. But that was the conclusion of the Ghost Rider story. However, let's get back to this. So here he is. He's fighting a bear in the snow. And then he's trying to help this Native American who's fighting a bear. But what ends up happening, and he doesn't have claws. He has these like 9-inch or 13-inch knives that he calls his claws. But then the bear stands up, and it's got this like terrible belly situation. And he fights it in the snow. And what I realized recently, not today, but within the last few years, the book that I drew a few years ago, Spread, is about a guy with pointy hair in the snow with 2 axes who fights creatures like bears that have like big, terrible stuff in their bellies. I didn't write Spread, but I thought that was interesting. Anyway, the bear throws him onto this pointed thing, which I didn't understand Wolverine. I didn't know that Wolverine had a healing factor. So same thing. I thought, oh my God, that guy's dead. That's crazy. And then some like Wizard of Oz style analogs for the construction workers appear, but they're dressed as traders. And they try to scalp Wolverine so they can trade in his his scalp for money, and then this guy gets stabbed, which, I mean, that guy, he didn't know his day was going to go that way. It's harsh. Anyway, then he saves the Native American, and they come to get him, and then it's continued again. And then I didn't get the next issue. I did end up getting the next one, and there's like a giant like mutant worm that comes out of the ground that he fights. But these 2 issues I have very fond memories of. And whenever, these aren't the ones, like mine were beat up. I got these later because anytime I see these in a 50-cent box, I will buy the hell out of them. But I'm going to keep talking. The story that finished right before this one started, I found out later, was another Wolverine story with all these awesome Sam Keith covers. And it's the one with Cyber, the first one with Cyber.
Oh, yeah.
And
I love the way Sam Keith drew Cyber. He was really cool.
And so here's Cyber and Wolverine. However, I didn't know what that was. So when I found all these, probably within the last 10 years, I was like, oh my God, because it was exactly what got me into comics. It was exactly the same flavor. And I love that when you can find that pure stuff that's exactly like what you loved, and it's just new to you. And also, while I was digging, I did find Marvel Comics 100, which to me has a hilarious scene where Doctor Doom, it explains that Doctor Doom has an amazing suit that regulates his temperature, that he never needs to leave his suit or do anything. But it starts by showing him sleeping in bed with a blanket on.
That's awesome.
That's all I got.
It's the comfort of home. It's not so much for temperature.
Mm-hmm. This is a weird issue, too. You can tell Sam Keith was trying to draw a lot of pages in a month.
It's funny, that thing you were saying about that seeping into your head and it coming out in spread. It's weird how that works. There's a racing scene at the beginning of Gearhead #1 that I just wrote a racing scene. Didn't think anything of it. Wasn't a big deal in the issue. It's like the cold open. And a few years later, I was watching television and Stand By Me came on. And there's a racing scene in that where Kiefer Sutherland beats his friends because there's an oncoming truck or something. And Kiefer Sutherland's car is a convertible that looks almost exactly like Shelby's car. And that scene plays out beat for beat exactly the way the racing scene. Like without the truck, but like the car looks the same. He zips around and then it pushes in on his face and he says, "I win," which is exactly what it did in the comic. And I saw Stand By Me probably 30 times when I was a kid, so I'm sure that just like on my subconscious.
There's an issue of Spawn, like issue 51 or 52, that I hadn't looked at in 20 years. And same thing with this. When I was doing spread, like a whole bunch of that imagery, I just was like, oh yeah, this is the stuff I like. It's weird. And Cullen does it all the time, probably with himself. He writes so much stuff. I
am only inspired by my previous work.
Uh-huh.
And Legion of Monsters.
And Dennis Hopeless's Legion of Monsters. Which I did while sorting through my comics the other day. It's been a few weeks now. Or I would have had my Avengers number 154. I did find my Legion of Monsters floppies. And I put them right back in the box. But I put them back in the keep box.
Oh, well, thank you. It's the first thing I ever got paid to write.
Legion of Monsters?
Yeah, Legion of Monsters #1 and the first quarter of X-Men Season 1 I wrote the same month, but I wrote Legion of Monsters first.
So our friend Josh Roberts sent me this hardcover. He took all the issues of Spread, all the floppies, and he had somebody bind it together.
That was done by Omaha Bound, by the way. Our buddy Tim Benson at Omaha Bound did that, I'm sure. So if you are looking to get some books bound in amazing fashion, like Kyle's going to show you here, Tim Benson's the guy to reach out to.
Here's my pointy-haired guy in the snow with a monster that he's about to fight. But yeah, this is amazing, and it looks really cool. I might do this myself.
I do it with a lot of my stuff, both my books that I've written and my collection.
And Legion of Monsters, did you do it with that?
It's too short to do a single buy. I mean, I don't, it's only 4 issues, so no, I won't be doing that.
You could just do a Dennis Hopeless collection where you put all your favorite story arcs from my books that
That's a good
inspire
idea.
you.
Wait, let's go in my room.
Yeah,
Children
I could
about
do
to
that.
look
I could.
One more thing I found, which was this Dark Horse comic Virus. They made a movie with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, there's a movie.
And I remember in Wizard magazine, they were like, it's based on this comic. And so when I saw this happens a lot. When I saw this in a 50-cent box, I was like, oh, that's that. I always wanted that as a kid, so I need it. But I will often buy these like indie comics that used to be hot and now they're not. Remember Oz that came out in like 1997? Not the one that Scotty did. It was like a dark version.
Oh yeah.
And the pumpkin head guy had like a scythe on the cover.
That was that by Caliber Comics, maybe?
Maybe. Same
It's
thing.
Right era.
I have it now because I found it for $1.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, there we go.
Mike
There's a
Plug.
memorable comics. I do love Mike Plug art. I have a set of Mike Plug trading cards somewhere in a box.
Yeah, that guy's amazing.
Like,
He did the storyboards for The Thing. Is that right? I could be wrong.
oh, I don't know about that. Maybe.
Impossible to say.
I don't think it's impossible to say.
Yeah, that was a joke.
All right.
I was thinking about earlier though, like when you would get comics as a kid and you didn't know something, you had to just not know it unless you could find more comics. Because most of the time when I got them, my mom would go to Sam's Club and buy me those collected boxes that were just, I'm sure they were just, shops didn't sell a bunch of issues that week, so they packed them up and sold them for cheap. But they were never like consecutive, and I could never get the next ones because they were all 6 months old. So I read a lot of single issues.
And that was what was fun, I think, about then you'd talk to a friend who had different issues, and they would be able to tell you the stories. But we talked last time about not dressing out for gym class, and I feel like that was a lot of the talk when we were sitting on the sidelines. We'd be like,
funny.
oh.
Yeah, I was just thinking when Spider-Man got his black suit, I was in gym class, not dressed out, and I was reading Secret Wars. And if you remember, so Secret Wars was a 12-issue series, but in the other comics that were supposed to be tying into it, they just jumped it ahead to what happened after Secret Wars. So the next issue of Spider-Man, he was in that black suit. And I remember a friend bringing that issue going, look at this. And I was like, what is going to happen in Secret Wars that he gets this crazy black suit? Because I loved Secret Wars as a kid, but I wasn't reading Spider-Man like my buddy was, but he was keeping up on all that stuff.
Yeah, I had a buddy who would always bring in the lead up to the death of Superman, and that's how I got to see that stuff.
Yeah.
How did you guys get out of dressing out in gym class?
Said, I ain't going to do it. You can't make me.
I just didn't do it, and then I got like a D.
Well, I must have done it more than you did because I did not get a D. But we had a certain number of we cannot dress out a certain number of times and it wouldn't affect your grade.
Also, I'm just lumping that in. It might be that they were playing basketball. Like, it's a free day. So for our free day, we sat on the bleachers and talked about bullshit. I remember once with my friend Justin, when we had to run the mile, he and I would just slowly run and talk about bullshit like that.
And then when I was in sixth grade, I don't know how you guys did your school, but and I'm sure I've told this story before. Maybe I know I've told it before, but I think I probably told it on Missouri Swagger. We were divided into smartness categories.
Is that true?
Yeah, it was 6'1". Those were the smartest kids. 6'2", 6'3", and 6'4".
That's crazy.
And that's what it was called, 6'1" through 4.
Which were you?
And, well,
I guess you're going to get to it.
I am getting to it. So in order to put us in these categories, they tested us like at the beginning of the school year. And it was only based on math. And I've never been a math guy. So they immediately put me in 6'4". Because my math skills weren't that great. And I don't know, a few weeks into class, I was like getting more than 100% on everything because we had extra credit, and I was just they were like, something's wrong. This kid's not supposed to be in this class. So they said, okay, we're going to move you out. So they moved me to 6'2", which is where I was supposed to be.
You skipped 6'3".
Yeah. But they moved me to 6'2", but for some reason they couldn't put me in. Oh, they wanted to put me in like a more of a one-on-one math situation so I could have a teacher who was decent and could get me up to speed on math. But because they did that, I couldn't take gym with the other 6th graders in 6'2". So instead, I took gym with all the 9th graders.
Oh, no. Fuck.
The difference between a 6th grader and a 9th grader is astronomical. I mean, they look like giants.
Did they have pubic hair coming out of the bottom of their pants?
I'm sure they did. I don't know. They may have done the peanut butter deal.
Solution.
Peanut butter solution. But anyway, so I was the only 6th grader in a class full of 9th graders in gym. And they wouldn't let me sit out. They made me do gym with them every time. And they all adopted me as their little mascot. They gave me a different name.
Were you scrappy? Would you say you were scrappy?
A scrappy kid? I was scared at first, and then I became a little more scrappy.
Were you mouthy to them?
No, but I'll tell you why they liked me. We did this tournament. We had 4 basketball hoops, and we did this tournament where you had to run around and you were trying to beat the other team, and everybody in your team had to get a basket in all 4 of the baskets. And they got to me they put me at the end of the team. Like, we'll just motor through this on our team. And then Cullen, who's 3 feet shorter than the rest of us, he can just have all the time he needs to do it. And we went around, and I did need a lot of extra time, but the other team was catching up, and I finally got the basket, and they put me on their shoulders and carried me around the gym. They did again, and then they never called me Cullen. They called me Byron for some reason. So if I were to somehow find my 6th grade book,
little Lord Byron.
Yeah, you see all these people signing it to Byron.
I wonder why. They called you Byron.
I can't remember, but I know they called me Byron. But the great thing was, during that time, there was these 7th graders who were picking on me and all my friends. I mean, and they were being vicious to us. Like, we didn't want to leave the lunchroom. We had to watch it. If they showed up, they'd throw us out of line. They were just the most vicious kids.
Were they 6'3"?
No, the 7th graders weren't, but they were just mean bully.
No, I
kids.
mean, how stupid were they? I mean,
I don't know. They were probably, when I think back on the bullies in school, they were not dumb kids. They were the smarter kids who were the bullies to us. But I remember them bugging me. They were all up on us one day, accosting us. And my 9th grade friend, Rufus, who was tall for a 9th grader, came up and he's like, "Are you guys messing with Mr. Bunn?" And they were all like, "What?" And he said, if I ever see you so much as talk to him or his friends again, you're going to have the worst day you've ever had. And they never bothered us again because they were terrified of Rufus and the 9th graders. Rufus went on to manage the arcade in our mall and offer sage advice to us kids.
Like what?
I remember when I was like 16, we were all going to the mall and we were talking, me and my friends were talking to this girl and I won't say her name. We were talking to this girl and I remember she walked off and Rufus was like standing there. There's the door that the arcade guy sits behind, and people come up and sit in my quarters. And he was looking at us like this. And he was going. So we went up and I was like, "What do you say?" And he says, "Some girls aren't worth chasing." And then he just walk away. And that was his sage advice. He was telling us, leave her alone. She wasn't worth it. And Rufus was probably right. But yeah, so he worked after he graduated high school, he worked in the arcade and we'd see him in the arcade all the time.
Did he give you the name Byron?
He was one of them that gave me the name Byron, but
I feel like a guy named Rufus would think that the name Cullen is a little highfalutin.
Maybe. Well, Rufus was like he was like one of the most popular. He was gregarious and everybody loved Rufus. He was the guy that all the other 9th graders looked to as like, he's like the leader, one of the leaders of the pack. So he might have given me that name.
Maybe so.
So there you go. And that will be my Missouri Swagger story.
It was good. It was a good story.
Because I don't have any others right now.
All right.
All right.
That's an episode. Thanks, folks.
Dennis,
Thank you.
Would you please tell everybody about the next episode and what it will be?
We're gonna make it better. And I normally we're gonna do better next time is a joke because I feel like we're not. But having gone back, we did get better over time. So we might get very incrementally better next time.
The next episode you watch, if you watch all these episodes, is the lost episode.
Yeah, it's 2 episodes old.
It's
there
from
was
the
a
past.
episode,
It's
yes.
from the past. It's never aired. It's like Dark Shadows. There's a missing episode.
Did we say something we weren't supposed to in that episode? And that's
No, he just had them misnumbered.
Oh, but I like that we say. Did you guys watch The Fly 2 with Eric Stoltz? And he's turning into the fly, and his girlfriend comes in, and she's like, "You're getting worse." And he goes,
Yeah.
"I'm getting better." But really, he's mutating. That's what I feel like we're doing.
Yes.
We have something that gets added somewhere. I don't know.
I'll be right back.
Oh my God.